Okay, it's about a minute after noon. We already have 141 people on here, so we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome, everybody. This is Shireen Gabriel. For those of you who don't know me, I'm president of the university. I think it's the first time I've chaired a town hall meeting in my good old Rush sweats, but maybe we'll start a trend or something. So I wanted to welcome everybody, students, faculty, hopefully we have some staff as well, to our town hall today, which, as you know, will be focused on resilience and enhancing our resilience through this time period. I just have a few tasks. First of all, I'm going to introduce the panelists, and I think all of them are here with us today. Myself, Dr. Sue Freeman, the University Provost, Dr. David Katz, Vice Provost for Academic Affairs and Chief Knowledge Officer. Dr. Chubinskaya is with us, Vice Provost for Faculty Affairs, Ward, Vice Provost for Student Affairs. And we have our deans with us, Dean Andy Bean, Dean of the Graduate College, Dean Charlotte Royen, Dean of the College of Health Sciences, and Dean Christine Kennedy from the College of Nursing. I don't believe we have our medical college dean with us today. And we do have a couple of speakers I'm excited to briefly introduce here today and get right into their discussion. So first off, we have Eve Positek. I hope I did a reasonable job of that, Eve. And we're very thrilled because Eve recently joined Rush as the Director of Strategic Initiatives for Rush Wellness in March 2020, coming from the University of Chicago. And Eve previously worked in operations and strategy roles where I will say she witnessed firsthand how anxiety, depression, and burnout affected teams, and is now dedicating herself to help address all of those things. And Eve has brought with her a colleague, Rebecca Leahy, which I'll welcome, Rebecca. I'll maybe wait for Eve to go ahead and get us started, and then introduce you. And without further ado, actually, before we jump into the agenda, other jobs I have are to let you know that Ryan Nagdeman from Communications is going to be helping moderate the Q&A session. So if anything goes wrong, you know who to point to there with the Q&A session. And just to remind everybody to please mute yourselves if you're not speaking. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Eve, to just maybe do a little bit more of an introduction for yourself and a little bit more for Rebecca. And we'll jump right in. Thank you again to you both for joining us.
Well, thank you for having us. We are so excited to be here today. It is a pleasure to be presenting to you our Rush Wellness program and strategies to promote your wellness during this very unique time in our history and in our lives. First, I'll introduce my colleague, Rebecca. Rebecca has been a member of the Rush community for the past 10 years. She is a licensed clinical social worker who serves both as a manager at the Center for Clinical Wellness. So she oversees our operations and our staff. But she is also the manager of the mental health program in the Department of Social Work and Community Health. Rebecca wears many hats, and we are so excited to have her on our team. I am really excited to speak with you all today because wellness for our healthcare workers and for our students is such a passion for me. To just give a little bit more detail on my background. So I worked in the Biological Sciences Division at University of Chicago for about 5 years in different operations roles, where I observed firsthand how we would have these excited, really passionate staff members, whether they were physicians, medical students, residents, nurse practitioners, nurses, our medical assistants, come into this profession with so much excitement and then quickly feel stamped out by the day-to-day challenges, whether it was the EMR was too hard to use, or feeling completely overwhelmed about the idea of building a practice, or maybe just not even knowing who to ask for help when a challenge arose. I really wanted to make a difference, but felt like I didn't have the tools necessary to impact real change. And when I heard about the Rush Wellness Program, I was so excited to apply and eventually join this program because I think it really is something different and something unique that Rush offers that very few institutions do. A real commitment to the well-being of their students and of their staff and of their providers. So I'm excited to share with you today the resources that we have just started and are hoping to grow and expand, as well as just some strategies for combating the challenges that we're all dealing with right now. It's been a really tumultuous year, and I think it's so important to recognize what we've all been through and have made it through. So I'm so excited to share this presentation with you and with Rebecca. We will be monitoring the chat. Ryan, I have encouraged him to interrupt us, and we're hoping to make it more of a conversation versus just a traditional presentation. So please, as you have questions, feedback, let us know, and we'll go ahead and get started. All right. Can you all see my screen okay? I will take that as a yes. First, I want to just start with an exercise. You may have noticed in your chat that there is an option to fill out a Mentimeter poll. What I'm going to do is share my screen with you so that we can all participate together and see what are things that you haven't noticed before in your room. This is just a centering exercise, just getting us in the moment. So look around your room. What haven't you noticed before? Maybe it's the dust bunny underneath you, or some trash you need to pick up, or maybe that's just my house. So it looks like we have some responses coming in here. And Rebecca, I encourage you to also participate here. It looks like somebody isn't muted. So if someone does need to get muted, please direct chat Pedro and he can help you out. Dust. Okay, glad someone else is like me and is realizing their home is very dirty. Hole punches on the floor.
And as you go through this exercise, this is one of my favorite grounding exercises when my mind is racing. It's an alternative to deep breathing or some other relaxation techniques with meditation, because it allows me to start focusing rather than focusing on my racing thoughts or my breathing. It's something very targeted. So as you look around the room and notice 5 new things, kind of try to come back into your body and come into the space as we head into the discussion today. A lot of great responses too.
For the individual who said nothing, really nothing? That's awesome. I'm glad you're very observant of your space. That's awesome. Could there be possibly anything in this room that I haven't seen? Been in here for like a year. I can definitely relate with that feeling. I've gotten very comfortable with my apartment. Also with my, apartment mate, my husband. He's my new work colleague. It's been kind of interesting. Working through new schedules together. I don't know if anyone else can relate there.
And even if you've been in your space a million times, it is surprising when you actually really intentionally focus. Maybe you've seen it before because you put it in the space, but things that you haven't really paid attention to or you kind of gloss over. It is hard when we've been in our spaces so much during quarantine.
Sorry to interrupt. I just have to comment on all of the pet comments, which are really, really cool. And I think I misspoke. I said that our medical college dean was not going to join us, and I see him here. So thanks for joining us, Dean Canetti.
Absolutely.
Well, I think something powerful too about this centering exercise is seeing how much we all share. Sometimes, especially in this pandemic, I know I can feel pretty alone and feel like, that my experience is unique. And while we all have unique experiences, I think there's always something that we can find to identify within our community. Social connection is such an important part of well-being. And I think even just relating on these, small things, maybe the ceiling that needs to be repainted or, the dust bunnies under the couch, really humanizes us and I hope creates a sense of community for you. All right, I'm going to go ahead and go to the next question. Let me see if I can get it to work for me.
Great. Again, try to notice as Eve transitions, the focus and being present in your space. And so it did pop
Great.
up for me, Eve, as well.
Perfect. So what does wellness mean to you? I ask this question because I think wellness is a very ambiguous term. And that is, as the director of the wellness program here, I say that openly. So I'd love to ask this question for folks because it helps actually center me on the type of conversation that we should have about wellness. You know, having come from another academic institution, I can tell you that there were some colleagues when I told them I was leaving for this role, they're like, well, why would you want to work in wellness? What does that even mean? Are you going to be leading yoga sessions? I'm not very flexible, so my yoga sessions would be pretty dull. But I can say that this ambiguity around wellness is a sign to me of how important it is to start having these conversations in the healthcare community. You know, I think not only do we set an example for our patients, but we also set an example for our family, for our friends, of how to live in a healthy way. And while we can talk about, you know, being physically active and, you know, maybe healthy sleep cycles, you know, taking care of yourself is really important. And we're going to go into that more later, but I just want to point out to you that it's okay to take care of yourself. And especially when there's a lot of things going on around us, it's more important than ever to really think of how you can prioritize self-care so you can give back to others. I love these things that are popping up here: contentment, peace, happiness, calm, health, balance. As the words get larger, that means more folks have put that in as responses. So just kind of orienting you to this word cloud here. Dr. Adebayo likes to tease me because I really love word clouds, so often incorporate them into my presentation. So if we're ever together again, you may see a similar word cloud.
To be fair, it's much more advanced than I could do, so I'm appreciative. I think it's really great to see the visual representation of what people are chatting in.
Yeah, great. Not exploding. I like that response. Even keeled, stress-free, happiness. Now, I think in Rebecca, I open this up to you. I think that's always an interesting thing to talk about with wellness, is the idea of happiness, because something I've learned from, you know, the amazing staff that we have at the Center for Clinical Wellness is happiness can kind of be a trap. You know, you're not going to be happy all the time, and that's actually okay. That's something that, you know, if you're feeling like you're not really there many days, just know that a lot of us aren't. And while it's great to be happy when we are happy, it's certainly not the norm to feel that way all the time.
Definitely, and it's about being equipped to kind of manage when those things do pop up that challenge happiness, or when we're not feeling happy. And somebody entered into the chat that we can never be stress-free, but managing stress is key. And I feel like that's spot on for what you were just talking about, Eve.
Yeah.
So thank you for
It's actually a really great transition to our presentation. So I might end this word cloud here. I look at this afterwards, so if you want to keep putting in responses, just know that I'll enjoy looking at it. But I do want to be sensitive to our time today, so I'll go ahead and transition back to our presentation.
Thank you, everyone, for the participation so far. It's, you know, we definitely keep it up throughout the presentation as well.
So just walking us through what we're going to go over today, I'm just going to give you a brief overview of Rush Wellness and why it's important, particularly right now. Rebecca is going to share strategies to promote wellness with some comments from me. And then we're going to talk about different options for support so that you can get the support that you need today. So Rush Wellness, we believe that this is a philosophy, that Rush Wellness is a cultural shift. And those are really big words. And I hope you know that I'm very serious when I say them. I don't think this is going to happen tomorrow. I don't think it's probably going to happen next year. But I hope that over the next 4 to 5 years, that we'll really, as a community, make a commitment to making wellness a priority and change the culture that we have surrounding mental health and suicide prevention. Something that I think is really important when we're thinking about mental health is the idea of seeking help. We really believe that seeking help is a strength, and that, you know, it's something we would encourage our patients to do. If, you know, for example, somebody slipped on ice and needed care, we would tell them, please go to the ER and get the care that you need. Similarly, when you're feeling low and you don't feel like yourself, I hope you know that you should seek care and that that's okay. None of us are great 100% of the time. None of us are happy 100% of the time. And what's amazing is that we're in a community where people can help you right away and you can get the support that you need. So I just, really want to say that as a faculty member or course director, you're building the future of healthcare in addition to being a member. And as a student, you are our future. So you can start changing these conversations around the idea of well-being, around the idea of mental health, that it shouldn't be something stigmatized, but instead a core value, something that's important to providing great patient care. It's been a really interesting year. COVID-19 has changed normal for, I would like to say all of us, but I'll say many of us. And I'd like to share this graphic just to share that it isn't over. Even when we get through the, ideally get a lot of our folks vaccinated, the numbers start to come down and life starts to look a little bit like it did before, we still need to deal with the trauma, that fourth wave that's affected us for the last year. And I think as healthcare workers and students, this is particularly prevalent. The trauma that you've encountered, whether it's through a clinical rotation, whether it's feeling isolated at home, whether it's feeling like I just started a new program and I have no idea who's in my cohort, or if you're a faculty member feeling like I've never been so unable to connect with my students because Zoom is hard for all of us. This is the kind of thing that we need to deal with, and we need to recognize and create space for that. It's okay to not be okay, and that we need to create resources and support addressing that issue. So as we move forward, I think it's important to redefine our normal, and that this is going to take time and it's an active effort. So, for me, what this might look like, and I encourage Rebecca to step in here, it's not being able to see my parents necessarily when I want to, and being concerned about the health of their health and the health of my children. Knowing that easy family gatherings like the Super Bowl aren't so easy anymore. Celebrating Christmas or a holiday alone is a new challenge for me, especially as a pretty family-oriented person. And it's something that I've been adjusting to this year. What's great is knowing that there's help to deal with those emotions that have arisen from those challenges.
Absolutely.
So I want to
Eve,
talk
if I
about,
can hop in here, not a question, but
Yeah.
there may be something on your end that's clicking.
oh, might be my earrings hitting my AirPods.
There we go. That's it.
Sorry about that, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate it.
Oh.
So diving back into it, we have a new normal. It's a big adjustment for all of us, but we want to share with you some quick strategies that you can start to incorporate into your daily life to promote your wellness. Now, these are not long-term solutions unless there's an active effort for these. It's easy to say, practice self-care, but you might be like, Eve, how is that really possible? Because I don't really have time in my day to brush my teeth, let alone do a yoga session. So what we're going to talk about today is the stepping stone. And I want to just recognize that, it's easier for some of us and harder for others, but it's why we have Ryan here. So if you have comments or questions about anything that Rebecca walks us through today, please hop in. We're going to share our own personal experiences with these, but I really want to make this a conversation. So Rebecca, if you can start us off on practicing self-care.
Absolutely. And thanks, Steve, for everything you've laid the groundwork for thus far. I think as we go through these strategies, you had mentioned kind of how do we create a new normal? And for me, it's been, and I think like many, it's been really hard to sit with the uncertainty, not knowing timelines, not knowing if and when things can change. And so hopefully some of these tools will feel like anchors that we can utilize even while we sit with some of that uncertainty and the unknown. So we will start with practicing self-care, and we have some strategies on the next slide. So we want to focus not on self-care being something that is a nice to have, but rather on something that is necessary for us. I have highlighted here that it's necessary for our immune system strength and also for our emotional strength. And often I think when I talk about self-care, it feels ambiguous to some folks, but also it feels like something that just is insurmountable, right? So the idea of putting in a whole new routine of exercise, changing up our diet, of taking time to meditate daily, it often feels like a mountain. And we want to really debunk that. We want to think about small incremental changes that are really reasonable with the busy schedules that you all have. So even just focusing at a baseline, getting enough sleep, trying to implement any level of exercise, even if that's just doing a couple jumping jacks between classes, or trying to get up and walk more in between work and lectures, trying to focus on healthy eating versus some of the more quick fixes, activities that are not only physical, sometimes like dancing is on there, which we might not always feel like doing that, but it definitely does boost the mood. Doing activities that we enjoy, and then engaging the five senses is another way. So when I feel like I'm a little stuck and I'm like, I know I need to take a break, but my mind is racing, which I disclosed that before. That's something that I often contend with, wearing the many hats that you've mentioned. I think that engaging our five senses to think about, okay, like what's one sense that I could focus on today to implement some sort of self-care? So scent, vision, touch, even just focusing on touching something soft and just deep breathing. It can be as small as that, and it can be just minutes. And so wanting to make sure that we prioritize small time for self-care. And then of course, implementing routines that can be maybe a little bit longer, a little bit more regimented. That would be great, but start small and try to get there slowly. Otherwise it feels unsustainable and we accidentally set ourselves up for failure. I know I've definitely done that myself. I try too hard to make changes that aren't really sustainable right away. And ultimately I kind of go back to my old routines rather than making those small changes along the way. And on the next slide, we actually have a tool that is helpful for you all to maybe get a jumping off point. So if you lift your phones to the screen and you turn on your phone's camera, phone or tablet, this QR code will bring you to a resource page on Inside Rush that you can access as students and faculty with some some resources for my yoga works, some self-care lists and brainstorming ideas. And again, if we're feeling like the decision fatigue is too high to even think about what to do, this is a great place to start. And not only for individuals, I think as a group, sometimes I've heard of folks, or I've encouraged folks actually in both directions, to get a friendly accountability partner or find somebody who, whether in classes or outside of classes in your personal life, who would want to be interested in implementing some of these things with you. Definitely not meant to put more pressure on, but it's a good way to be able to kind of keep this sustainably as part of what you're committing to in terms of managing not only self-care, but promoting your wellness and your well-being.
I think too, just from sharing my own experience, the idea of like taking 30 minutes out of my day to exercise or to meditate sounds super overwhelming. So something that I've found helpful, and hope that this is helpful to you, is instead like looking at things in 10 or 5-minute increments, whether that's a 10-minute workout or a 5-minute meditation. I can't even make it that long, truthfully, but a 2-minute meditation. Whatever works for you to make you feel a little more centered in your day. I think what I've recognized in this role is that everyone's different, and what works for them is different. And so if you find that you don't like meditating, if you don't like yoga, kind of the typical things you think of with wellness, try something else. It's not prescriptive. What works for you is great, and you shouldn't feel like you have to fit into a mold in order to take care of yourself.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think that that's important to recognize. Sometimes self-care is also the absence of an action, right? Sometimes self-care is just slowing down and actually taking a moment to breathe, or watching a show on Netflix or something along those lines, where we don't always have to be doing and pushing. And I've also found it helpful to incorporate some of that more meditative activities into things that I'm already doing that are more mundane, like washing the dishes, right? I don't love doing that. And I am focused on the task, but if I focus on just, again, how the soap feels, how the water feels, and I'm focused in the moment, it alleviates some of the stressors that are kind of circulating around us day to day. So another way to incorporate it without, quote unquote, wasting time that we don't really have. Wonderful. So now we're going to talk about finding some ways to focus, which is a good segue from the example that I just previously gave. And so from the get-go, we just want to acknowledge that it's pretty common to feel unmotivated right now. And it's pretty common to have kind of the waxing and waning of that motivation and energy, especially given the circumstances of the last year. It happens also outside of a pandemic, but it's even more prevalent during the pandemic. And so some tips that can help us to feel just a little bit more in control and a little bit more focused are listed here. So establishing a routine, trying to get up and go to bed and do our work at the same time every day. It really does help to get the brain into a routine that will hopefully increase focus. We want to think about taking breaks to not only reset, but then re-engage in our work when we come back. And I think for me, it's been really tough when I've been working from home to try to build that separation between, for me, work life and home life. And so this idea that if we have space, try to create different zones or different rooms where we do work versus where we do our relaxation or sleep is really, really key. I know I've shared with Eve that I find myself sometimes on the days that I work from my home office, all of a sudden I look up and it's 7 or 8 p.m. when I normally get off around 5 or 6. And the day bleeds because I'm in the same space that I will be when I exit my work day. And so creating these routines can be really helpful. Setting an alarm on my phone that reminds me, even if I, get a little bit of work in after my day is done, that's fine. But being able to signal to myself and have a routine for maybe changing out of my work clothes. Maybe there's some sort of, maybe I get my glass of water, whatever it is, but being able to transition out of your work or study space is really key. And another thing that we'll talk a little bit more about later, but I know that interpersonally, some of us are quarantining with folks, whether it's roommates or family, or just interacting with folks in a different way. And I think that sometimes interpersonally that tension can build when we're all feeling tension and we're all feeling unmotivated and we're all feeling kind of low in different moments. And so here it does suggest, and I fully endorse the use of I statements to express how we're feeling and setting boundaries. And so rather than telling Eve, you make me feel like I need to work all weekend, which she does not, I promise. Rather than saying that, I can say, I feel really stressed and I feel like I'm overwhelmed and that it needs to be taken care of this weekend. And it opens a dialogue rather than putting the other person on a defense. And so ultimately, I actually highlighted this last sentence. Don't judge yourself and just do the best you can. That applies to everything we're talking about today. But this idea of trying to implement all of these strategies, this idea that we're trying to be perfect, it's an illusion, unfortunately and fortunately. It actually gives us a little bit of grace. Perfection is not what we're aiming for. We need to do the best with what we have in the moment and give ourselves a little bit of breathing room. Otherwise, that shame cycle is only going to make things worse. And so I know it's hard, but I kind of want to keep coming back to that statement as we go through the presentation and the discussion today.
And I think that's so important, Rebecca, because as a type A person myself, I like to achieve. I like to check off things off my list. And when it doesn't quite go the way I thought it would, it's really disappointing. And it's hard to focus back in and not dwell on the negative outcomes of what just happened. I know it just in my history that a lot of healthcare workers and students can relate to that, but I think as a type A person, it can be hard to really give yourself that grace. And so I just really want to encourage you, even if you can't today, maybe make it a goal over time to go a little easy on yourself. It's okay if you didn't get that workout in today, or it's okay if, maybe that test didn't go the way you thought it might, or maybe you didn't get that promotion and you need to kind of rethink what's next. It's okay.
Absolutely. And again, not necessarily planned, but a great segue for kind of finding ways to manage disappointment, because right now, whether it's any of these examples listed here, there's a lot of things that just organically won't happen this year, right? We don't have the same opportunity for ritual around graduation or birthdays, or, in some cases, even funerals and deaths. And so we're grieving the loss of life as we had it pre-pandemic. And also for some of you, you're grieving the loss of what you thought it might look like this year, whether it's with a cohort that you're familiar with or you're brand new. We are not walking into the world that we expected. And so while I know it's not always easy to go to that place, I think a lot of us are pretty good at compartmentalization. And it's easy to say, well, this is the way of the world right now, and this is what I need to deal with. that is okay in some moments, right? Like if I'm walking in between classes, or if I'm, getting ready to get on a Zoom call with some friends after the school day ends, maybe that's not the time where I want to dive deep into my emotions that are a little bit more vulnerable. It's okay to compartmentalize, and it's a really helpful tool. And if we kind of keep shoving down this feeling of grief and loss that we feel over time, it ultimately shows up in other ways. And so creating space and time to recognize, hey, I'm really disappointed, I'm sad, I am unhappy with how things are turning out. That's okay. And it's important to be able to process through, because then it gives us the opportunity to reframe it. Okay, so this is where I am disappointed, that's valid, and what do I want to do next? So thinking about how can we kind of change the rituals, and I'm sure some of you actually have found ways to do this, right, already, just organically without naming it in this way. But how do we think about new ways to celebrate? How do we think about future thinking, right? How do I celebrate this particular life event when we actually can be in person? Maybe we want to hold off on the big celebration until we can be back in person. And also recognizing that while we are in this space and it's harder to honor some of these life events, I'll just call them in a more broad way, it's also really easy to jump past the things that have gone well, right? We don't have that person to celebrate with, or, well, yes, I did this, but I'm still feeling stuck in a lot of other ways. And so I want to really encourage you all to reflect on the things that you have achieved. I guarantee, without a doubt, each of you have multiple things that you can be either grateful for or proud of over the last year, over the last several years. And again, as overachievers as many of you are, because we have such a strong program here across all 4 universities, we tend to just jump past it and say, well, that's the norm. I should be doing well, right? Or I should achieve this. It's great to have expectations for ourselves, but it's also good to celebrate before we try to go on to the next challenge. And so I want to really make sure we take time to pause, to grieve, but also to celebrate.
I think this negativity bias that Rebecca.
Rebecca, comment. Hope this PowerPoint will be available. So many helpful insights and tips, and so I think this is really hitting home for many. Could you remind us, maybe post in the chat the link to where we could download these resources later, or that page on Inside Rush?
Definitely. We will do both. We want to make sure that you get access to these resources. And I think too that we're recording this presentation, and I'm happy to share this PowerPoint with whomever might be interested.
Yeah, thank you, Ryan.
Thanks, Ryan. I just want to point out that what Rebecca is describing is a negativity bias, and that is often a result of an outcomes-oriented culture like we have in healthcare. When we're thinking about how our patient outcomes, when we're thinking about our test scores, when we're thinking about graduating, when we're thinking about student feedback and creating a curriculum, it's easy to be negative because you can focus on that one bad comment, or that maybe that one bad experience with a patient, or maybe even the loss of a patient, or as a student, maybe this exam was the difference between your first pick and your last in terms of where you end up next. It's hard not to focus on outcomes, but when we do, we lose sight of what is going well in our lives, and we lose that holistic picture of what our life is. So just really want to emphasize that point, that it's so important to find what is going well, like the glimmers of light, even when things are pretty dark.
Absolutely.
And we had a cute, right on, very similar to that topic, question. How do you dial things back from the overwhelming push that we had in the early days of the pandemic? There's still a feeling of go, 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 go. So what are your thoughts, Eve and Rebecca?
Yeah, I'd venture to say. Yeah, sure. I venture to say in the fields that we're in, that go, 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 it was more intense during the pandemic first and second surge, but it's also been present kind of all along. And so it's really hard to navigate the tension between trying to be in that culture of go, 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 and also taking care of ourselves. So I think that's why we're kind of making this bite-sized, in the sense that we want to support small change. But as Eve had mentioned earlier, a culture shift is also something that we need to embrace in order to make this a sustainable future. I think also that what we can do in the short term is support one another. So having our leaders demonstrate what it looks like to take care of themselves and being open about that. as well as our colleagues and our fellow students being able to share what it looks like when they are doing things to take care of their wellness, and also being able to talk, whether it's with colleagues or even with one of our well-being advocates in the Center for Clinical Wellness when we're not doing so great. So just some very quick comments on that. But Eve, do you have something to add?
No, I think you hit all the marks. I think, honestly, that's going to be our challenge over the next few years, especially as we're dealing with the fallout of COVID-19. I think, truthfully, if you look prior to COVID-19, we were already burnt out in healthcare. People were already feeling depressed, feeling anxious, feeling like I can't do much more. And then we were asked by our community to take on even more. Yeah. So it's understandable that it's hard to stop. But I think in order to really make change happen, we have to go from this bottom-up, top-down approach where, as leaders, Rush will invest in you by, through Rush Wellness, through other supportive programs, but also from a bottom-up, ask for help when you need it, and that's okay. Again, seeking help is a strength.
Absolutely. And I think some language that really resonates with me when I'm trying to figure out how to do this as we balance, again, work, home, family, everything. It's kind of finding your anchors, right? Among the things we're talking about today, as you've mentioned, it's not one size fits all. So find what does resonate. Think about what's worked for you in the past. That's also something that I think gets overlooked. We always want to try to do something new and more. Try to look at things that have worked for you in the past when you're in other go or stressful situations, and see if that can still work for you. Sometimes, we shift over time and it doesn't always have the same effect, but it's a good place to start. And somebody had shared in the chat, Pamela said that her family is going to be celebrating Christmas in July if the COVID pandemic has abated enough. So that's another anchor, right? Look at things to look forward to, and also taking time in our day. One more comment before we go to the social media piece. I think that also, as we talk about self-care, focus, managing disappointment, something that we have difficulty doing is kind of containing and figuring out how and when we want to structure our day, especially again in these times. And I know I've been guilty when I was supposed to be studying, or I had really good intentions on a Saturday of studying and getting my housework done, kind of go drift and be in front of the TV. My book was open the entire time, or my computer's open. Aging myself a little bit, I think, but being able to know that ultimately what I did at the end of the day is I felt like I didn't study enough because I wasn't focused and my book was out and I had the expectation that I should, nor was I fully engaging in relaxation or time to myself. And so again, those boundaries we talked about before can be really helpful, even if again that self-care time is incremental. It's shifting that focus, because really multitasking is kind of another myth that we talk about, right? Single tasking is much more helpful and grounding. So.
Yeah, and I can definitely relate, Rebecca. I know that sometimes my coffee consumption would be greater than my consumption of information. Oddly, I felt like, one should support the other, but really the caffeine just made me super anxious and jittery, and then I couldn't focus at all. So, I think practicing self-care helps you realize, hey, like maybe this isn't working for me. It's an opportunity to take a look at your life and your choices. Like, for example, for me, in the pandemic, what's been so important is actually not having my phone in my bedroom when I try to go to bed, because otherwise I just keep looking at emails, or worse, look at the news and get super overwhelmed and depressed, because it seems like every day there's conflicting information out there. And as a healthcare professional, my family leans on me for information, even though I am not a clinical professional. And that's really scary, where I feel like I need to digest this information to share the right facts with my family. But it's so overwhelming to just say, I don't even know what to believe anymore. So that segueing into our next page.
It is. It's wonderful. No, you hit the nail on the head, Eve. I think we all want to be informed, and we all want to be, able to make decisions for ourselves based on the information that's out there, as well as support our families. But it's really anxiety provoking. The 24-hour news cycle has not helped. I think watching and rewatching some of the things, especially the more stressful events and the unknown, sitting with the unknown even more, has been tough. And social media has been really hard too. We see everybody's highlight reel. And I know for sure I was feeling very unaccomplished at the beginning, especially when everybody's learning how to make banana bread, and they're really doing all these wonderful things in their home. And I'm like, I'm just trying to make it. Like, I'm just trying to like sleep and get up and kind of get to work the next day and be present as we were trying to respond to the first wave. So
Seriously.
I didn't coin this term, right? I didn't coin this term, but somebody has used it before, a news diet, right? Like being able to just like set your phone aside, turn on airplane mode, and focus on, again, something that is not going to be as triggering for a little while. And then deciding if and when you kind of re-engage is really helpful.
Yeah, I know for me, what's really helped is I chose a newspaper to subscribe to their daily briefing. And that's the only thing I read all day, because otherwise I was just getting too anxious and feeling so out of control. I used to follow the COVID numbers like a hawk, saying like, oh God, we're up 1,000 today, and what does that really do? I can't control how folks in Illinois are handling their personal safety. I can't even control how, my in-laws handle their personal safety. All I can do is just try and lead by example and take care of my immediate family and try and instill best practices. So
absolutely. And not use media.
Yes.
But I've been guilty of that as a procrastination tool. Social media and news media.
So true.
Definitely an easy trap to fall in. So being intentional allows us to avoid that a little bit.
You know what really killed me this year was the murder hornets. I don't know if you all saw that story, but I was just like, really? There are murder hornets? Like, do we need something else? So,
It was like 1 million years ago also, which is very telling.
What happened to those murder hornets? I hope it was addressed. Anyway,
let us know.
So focusing on things you can control,
yeah.
Murder hornets not being one.
Yeah. Yeah. So as Eve was just detailing, kind of not just the current circumstances, but focusing on what others are doing, whether it's in the context of school and class and comparing ourselves, or if it's focusing on, again, behaviors in the context of COVID, it's really stressful. And this is something as a therapist I see all the time. We really want to change other people, not because we want to change them intentionally, but we want to really have things look better. We wish that somebody would engage with us differently. We wish that our mom would take care of herself, right? We wish all of these things, usually with good intentions, but ultimately we can't change anyone else. Can we have intentional conversations? Yes, but ultimately they're in control of them and we're in control of us. And so if it is helpful to recognize when we might fall into that cycle of kind of thinking about others' behavior and ruminating or getting stuck, thinking about, okay, what can I do with this piece of information, right? We can't control what's going on around us in our world all the time. That's really frustrating. We can get stuck in a worry cycle. And I had shared before that that's something for me that's really difficult, but instead grounding and focusing on things that we can control and we can change, from just moment by moment, right? What am I going to do after we wrap up this town hall today? To larger picture, how do I want to take care of myself, or how do I want to prep for when I go to the grocery store, or whatever it might be? Focusing on what I personally can control is a really helpful tool.
I think too, Rebecca, just adding on to what you said, you can't control necessarily how your gut responds to things, right? So when you learn disappointing information, whether it's from the news, about a test, maybe about, you didn't get a promotion, it's okay to be really mad, to be really disappointed, to be sad. These are all okay emotions. What you can control is what you do next. So, just want to bring that forward, that it's okay for your immediate response to be a negative emotion. Maybe think about what's after that.
Yeah. As Dr. Adebayo likes, I usually go back to the idea of both and, right? So yes, I feel mad and frustrated, and that person really should not have sent me that passive aggressive email. And am I going to get stuck on it and be in a bad mood for the rest of the day, which, that's also valid? Or is that going to help me get through the rest of the emails, meetings, classes that I have to get to? Probably not. And so that takes a little bit of power away from that other person to influence how I feel and what I do next. And what it does is it empowers me to make the choice that's right for me. Yeah, I could be mad and I could stay mad. And again, valid course of action. And maybe I'm in the place that day where I'm like, you know what, I want to be in my pettiness, and that's fine. But often that's not the place that's going to be the most helpful for us. And so you get to decide, and that power of choice, even recognizing those small choices day to day, gives us, again, more control and more control on the things that we can influence. So, okay. So as I transition to more formally to Eve, we're going to talk about some of the supports that are available. But before that, I want to just recognize that certainly when we're feeling super on edge or when we're feeling super overwhelmed, that might be really identifiable, right? And that's certainly a great signal to seek out some support, which Eve's going to detail. However, it's often showing up in smaller ways as we go through our day-to-day. Are we eating differently? Are we sleeping more than normal or less than normal? How are we feeling? And listening to our body. I know for some folks, you might have upset stomach or tension in your shoulders, headaches. So paying attention to when those more somatic symptoms pop up can be really helpful as a signal to know when you might need to inquire for some assistance. And something that we always want to plug is, it's always better to ask for help before we fall into the patterns of more maladaptive coping. And that can mean a lot of things, but here specifically we name use of drugs and alcohol, which can be numbing and which can maybe support in the moment, are often, not often, they are not good for our health, not good long term. And so recognizing when that those methods of coping aren't super helpful. Again, avoidance, things of that nature can help in the moment, but we want to talk about supports that are available so that we can have sustainable change and have people feel like they know where to go.
And I want to just name something we do in the Center for Clinical Wellness, just shifting to that page, is we offer both counseling and coaching. So, talking about that reactive and proactive approach, if you're thinking like, hey, I really want to make wellness a priority this year, but I'm not really sure how to start, think about signing up for a coaching session. One of our wellbeing advocates can walk you through different strategies that you can use, different priorities, and work with you to create an individualized plan to help you make self-care a priority this year. If you're not feeling great, if you need support, if maybe you've been avoiding getting that support you need, try making a counseling appointment. Again, we have a bunch of great folks, their backgrounds ranging from masters in social work to we have a psychologist and a psychiatrist available to help you. All of our services are free. We are so excited to help you and just really want to serve the Rush University community. This next page here, again, feel free to pull out your phone if you'd like to make an appointment today. But we're open 7 to 7, Monday through Friday. Again, we do serve employees, but students comprise about 45% of our current clients, and we've only been open since July. So we're so excited to see our student client expand over time, and it is so important to us to be here when you need us. So there is no wait time. If you encounter issues struggling, or if you encounter scheduling issues and you're struggling, contact us, whether it's at the Rush Wellness email, whether it's Rebecca or me. We don't want you to feel like you can't get the care that you need. So just know that we're here for you and we really care about you getting the support that you need.
Yeah. I just wanted to plug also, Eve, that while telehealth is available ongoing beyond just the pandemic, that it's something that we hope to offer. We are offering in-person appointments as soon as next week, which I think is going to be, for some folks, it's easier to talk in person versus over a video visit. And there's no cap on the number of times that somebody can come in. There's unlimited sessions for free through our Center for Clinical Wellness. Yep. And yeah.
And Eve and Rebecca, have you mentioned yet the center is located in first floor TOB?
We have not. Thanks, Ryan. So we're in first floor TOB. It is across the highway, which I admit with the snow feels far, but it is, I have clocked it. It is 5 minutes. If you're coming from the tower 4th floor to TOB, this is important for me personally because I have to run between often. So just know that though a little intimidating, it is not actually that far. Yeah. And what's really neat about the location we've chosen is that it's actually a one-way entry and a one-way exit. So you can come in and out and ensure that your privacy is secure. We stagger our appointments so that you don't overlap with anyone. We really think it's important for you to feel safe coming to us. So that's why we are where we are in the Triangle Office Building. And we want you to feel comfortable. It's a beautiful space. So I really encourage you guys to check it out. I will also say that we don't allow people to just pop by. You do need to make an appointment online. Reason being, again, is your privacy. We don't want you to come in and then somebody else from the cubicle next to you, from the desk across the room, to be in the same room as you and know that you're getting support. We want it to be a private experience for those who are uncomfortable with, their journey and need that support. So just know that, like, you are very secure coming to us, and we want to make sure that you get the help that you need.
And Eve, this QR code opens inside Rush page. That's the scheduling. It's not through my chart. There was a question, what's the mechanism here? It's just an intranet page, request appointment form.
Yep. So we're on our own platform, our own EMR platform. We're not an Epic. So unfortunately, you can't use my chart to schedule your appointment. Again, the reason we did this is for your confidentiality. For those who are in clinical programs, we wanted you to know that your cohort, your professors, they can't access your record. The only people who have access to your record at the counseling center are the employees of that counseling center.
Cool. And this session must be checking many boxes for people, because there's an ask. Could the Wellness Center provide a mini wellness retreat for students? What does that look like? Sorry to put you on the spot.
So yes, you can book a mini wellness retreat online. What this is it is a 30-minute coaching session, and then you get to use our Energy Pod, which is a clinically proven device to give you the best nap of your life. It's really neat. But it's honestly just a chance for you to recenter, to take 60 minutes of your day for you. So I love to encourage students to book these just before, like, a big test, or maybe afterward, as a way to just kind of decompress and actually book that self-care for themselves. So, again, that's available online. We don't do group mini wellness retreats because we only have one Energy Pod. So that's why you need to schedule it, but it's a really great thing, and we've gotten a lot of positive reviews from it.
Outside of the Energy Pod, is there any kind of group activity that the Wellness Center offers?
Yeah, so we're about to open, we haven't quite come up with the name, which is where we're getting stuck. Essentially a list of wellness talks and group sessions that anybody in the community can access. These range, what we're wanting to do is build your wellness toolkit. So ranging from Resiliency 101 to coping with social isolation to, encountering bullying and how to improve interpersonal relationships. We're really trying to come up with a range of topics, and as people will ask for new things, we add them to this list. So that's going to be available hopefully starting this week, if not next. So yes, if you are interested in a group session, you can email us at rushwellness@rush.edu.
Okay. And as those generally become available, we'll communicate about that in Rush News.
Yes.
And in Dr. Gabriel's weekly email, perhaps.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Just to be sensitive to our time here, I just quickly want to review the Rush Wellness Assistance Program. We get a lot of questions on what is the difference between the Center for Clinical Wellness and the Rush Wellness Assistance Program. There's a lot of wellness in these titles. I have no idea what this means. They are different, but they both provide counseling support for you. So we recognize that the Center for Clinical Wellness is Monday through Friday, 7 to 7. But what about those weekends that you need support? What about late evenings you need support? That's why we have the Rush Wellness Assistance Program. They are available 24/7 to you and to your immediate family, as well as your significant other. This is a great way to get immediate support when you can't wait till Monday. I encourage people to use both. It is not one or the other. It is a yes and. I think the other big difference with the Rush Wellness Assistance Program is that, unlike the Center for Clinical Wellness, which has no session cap, the Rush Wellness Assistance Program does have a session cap. It's 5 sessions. So this program is powered through a student employee assistance program called Perspectives. What they do is they'll connect with you for 5 sessions with a licensed clinical social worker or with a certified counselor. And then they will connect you to a provider in the community who is within your insurance network. This is really a great option for folks who are not comfortable with seeing somebody who works at Rush. All of our Center for Clinical Wellness employees are Rush employees. So if that in any way bothers you, just know that this is an option as well. The difference too, I would say, is, both are free, but there is no session cap at the Center for Clinical Wellness. We also have a psychiatrist and a psychologist on staff, should you need it. So if you need some medication management, or if, maybe the challenges you're dealing with are more appropriate for a psychologist, we have those personnel available to assist you. Great. And the QR code is here too. Again, I'm going to share this presentation, but I just want to leave a little time for questions. So I'll go ahead and go to the end of the presentation here.
Yeah.
Please ask us your questions. We're so excited to hear from you.
Definitely. And as people kind of gather their thoughts as we wrap up, I also want to plug that in response to some focus groups that happened with the students from the College of Health Sciences, we've been putting on a series of wellness workshops for students specifically, which I was answering some of the direct chat I was getting. So I don't know if you highlighted this earlier, Eve, but I wanted to just plug that there will be communication coming out about the session next week, which is at noon on Tuesday. And then we will have the same session repeated the following week in an early evening hour. So keep an eye out for that. This one is focusing on stress management, but there's a myriad of topics that were derived from the listening session. So again, as Eve has mentioned, we're here to try to respond to the needs. We're not here to assume what the needs are. And so please keep in communication with us and let us know. So I'll pause for questions as well. So feel free to chat or I don't know if folks can unmute, but we're here for it.
So I think I saw a question of which service has a clinical psychologist. That's the Center for Clinical Wellness. So that's us. That's the Rush service. That's the one that's in Triangle Office Building. Our psychologist is Dr. Sheila Dowd. She is fantastic. I love talking to her, listening to her. She is probably one of the most calming voices I have ever heard. So any other questions?
And there was one more. Yes, just again, we will send out a link of this session, a recording of it, and also make this PowerPoint available on the wellness intranet. So
yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, and a question came through about offering dialectical behavior therapy specifically. And so yes, we do have clinicians who are trained in DBT and can offer DBT, although for folks who are very familiar, it's not in the traditional sense. DBT is usually much more of a wraparound where there's folks available in a more 24/7 way. We still adhere to our hours, but the DBT skills and the DBT approach to therapy, you can certainly access through our Center for Clinical Wellness.
Thank you. Here's one more question. Tools, tips, coaching available to managers around recognizing wellness challenges in members of their team.
So that's actually a real passion project for me, and it's something I'm working on. So I can't say that we have that available right now, but I hope to have it available to you by the end of this fiscal year. I think it's so hard as a manager, as a leader, to know what do I do next, let alone how do I model the behavior that I would want my staff to share. It's really hard to turn off when there's a lot going on, and especially right now. So know that this is coming, but unfortunately it's not yet available. Looks like we got a question related to financial wellness. That is also something we're working on as well. I also know that our colleagues in benefits are working with Fifth Third to make financial wellness and education more available to our community entirely. So this is both to students and employees. There is a digital platform that has great courses and tools, literally Excel sheets that you can download to budget, that will be available soon.
Well, it's the top of the hour. It's 1 o'clock, and I really wanted to thank you, Eve and Rebecca, for leading in a wonderful conversation. Highly interactive, just as you'd planned. And I wanted to thank our, 250 odd participants, many of whom participated in the chat and in your interactive activities. So thank you, thank you, thank you. This is so far my favorite hour of the week. So I hope folks will follow up with any questions they have or specific ideas, and we'll have you back.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much for having us.
Back. Thank you so much for having us. And again, Any questions that weren't answered, feel free to contact us at rushwellness@rush.edu. Our entire staff, including me, checks it all the time. So you should get a response quickly.
Yeah. Thank you again, and thanks everybody for attending today.
Thanks so much.
Take care.
Take care all.